So we are now open. So I will start my intro because as people come in, they want to hear you talk anyway. So thanks everyone for joining us. This is our last Animex Games talk of the festival, of this year's festival. A few people have probably heard me say this intro a couple of times. I'm well aware that it gets tiresome because I'm the same person saying it all the time. So this is the last time you'll hear me say it for probably a year. So my name is Matty McGrory. I'm a senior lecturer at Teesside University. I specialize in game design. I'm the Animex Games coordinator for the festival. So Animex is our international festival of animation, VFX, and games, hosted by Teesside University. Under normal circumstances, we would host it on campus at Teesside University, and we get people on campus and show you how awesome the university is. But current situation being what it is, this year for the first year, we've done it all online, and it's been eventful. So far, so good, and I can relax after this one. But we've got a few more talks this evening. If you want any more information on us, you can follow us on Twitter. It's at Animex Festival. You can find more details on the festival itself, the other events that we got running over the next week as well, because we've still got more stuff coming up, including Industry Day and stuff like that. And we've got some really awesome workshops. You can find all that at animex.tees.ac.uk. There you can find a list of our sponsors, who kind of help us put this all together. Our main sponsor for this year being the Tees Valley Combined Authority. And because this is my last intro, I need to say that I get the cool chance to sit and introduce all these awesome speakers who have given loads of their time up to come talk for us. But it's I do a tiny bit of work compared to everyone else. So there is a massive team behind Animex and behind Animex Game, and it is a massive, massive team. And we're super, super proud of what we've managed this year. And we can't wait to hopefully have more people back on site in the future to enjoy Animex in its full physical form, as well as maybe an online version as well. And now I've said that, I might have to follow through on it. So my last speaker is from White Paper Games. He's the co-founder and designer, and he's here today to talk to us about practical tips to consider when developing and scaling small creative teams for business. So Pete Bottomley, like I said, is a co-founder and game director at White Paper Games. And White Paper Games released its first title, Ether 1, on March 25th, 2014, to critical and popular acclaim. And honestly, personally, I was like, I got to get them. I got to get these guys for Animex someday. It was nominated for the Develop Award for Use of Narrative and was also a finalist in Indiecade 2014. They shipped their second title, The Occupation, on the 5th of March 2019, which gained the studio position in Creative England's top 50 most innovative companies across all digital media, along with a nomination for Best Use of Engine at Develop in 2019. The Occupation then went on to win Best Performance Award at Indiecade 2019, and White Paper Games are now working on their next title, which is soon to be announced. So it's my great pleasure to welcome to Animex, Pete Bottomley.
Oh, thanks, Matty. Thanks for the introduction there. I'll just share my screen with people if that's possible. I don't seem to have screen sharing capabilities at the moment. There we go, got it. Okay, cool. So yeah, thanks for joining us this Friday evening, everyone. And I wanted to put a little talk together on developing and scaling small teams because it's something that's close to our hearts. As from that introduction, you can see that we kind of started as a very small team and slowly scaling from there. But also, I do one day a week lecture in a UCLan, and there's a lot of graduates now starting to want to form their own small teams and go on to creating these larger projects. And also, you know, AAA, AA developers that are wanting to know what it's like to kind of start a small business. So by no means we're perfect at what we do, but hopefully we can provide some practical tips along the way on the type of stuff that we create. So most people will recognize this game. It's something very close to our studio's heart. It's an immersive sim. An immersive sim basically puts the player in a world, gives them tools and tells them to get to the objective, but it's up to them how they get to that objective. And Deus Ex, another game that's personally resonated with me, and you can tell by just the design of the world, the believability of the space, and the people that live there. You know, just by exploring these stories, it's called environmental storytelling. You can piece together a story without being too heavy-handed in the storytelling. And then lastly, although not what you'd class as an immersive sim, although the developers have history in those games, BioShock, again, is something that resonates with our studio. So as we're setting out to think about the types of games we're creating, we're definitely inspired by these kinds of titles. So our game, the video showing, you posed with a set of core mechanics. We have very little at our disposal. I'll loop that video again. We have, a Walkman, a watch which you can use, and then a pager. And essentially that's all the diegetic kind of game mechanics that we use to create our games. And with that, we created a game called The Occupation. And The Occupation was dreamed up from looking at those previous games that I was speaking about. And we were kind of in the studio spitballing ideas, and the way we approach our games is that a range of disciplines can sit in the same room and think, okay, what is it that I'm personally creatively interested in pursuing right now, and what can I bring to the table in that area? So, we had never made a game with 3D characters before. As Matty mentioned in the intro, the first game, Ether 1, is very much more of a walking sim narrative exploration. And a walking sim essentially just means, traditionally you're placed in a world, there's very few core mechanics, a lot of walking, hence the name, and you're trying to piece the world together. But we wanted to introduce 3D characters, and what would that mean for a game this time? And, around the table, around the room, we'd all kind of bring to the forefront of what it was that we were interested in. So I very much grew up on the Thief games, games like Dishonored, Deus Ex, as I mentioned at the start, and the BioShock games. So, you got Ether 1 on the one side that has very much first-person narrative exploration. The world is open for you to explore, but ultimately there's no hard gating in the games. There's no fail state, and there's no game over screen. So it's up to you to just explore. And so we were thinking, okay, what if we could take the elements that we were known from our previous game and introduce something like an immersive sim? What would the system-driven storytelling provide us? So this comes to the crux of the talk. We thought it would take 3 years. Maybe our previous game took 4, so if this one takes 3, that would be great. We had new tools and technology. So if anyone's been developing more recently, you'll know that there's a new wave of engines and platforms coming, and they're things that you just have to deal with in production. We had never created a game budget before, and so our first game, we very much bootstrapped it. We didn't have a publishing budget. We kind of put all our money together just to try and push this game out. So you can imagine over the space of 4 years developing, just bootstrapping our way there, just releasing something that we were proud of. When it came to make the second game and we were able to get a budget for the game, it's okay, how much does this game cost? We had never kind of created those steps to put a practical plan in place, which is something that I'm hoping to kind of talk about this evening. I had personally never designed a system-driven gameplay before. So Ether 1, very much puzzle game. If you think, you find components of a puzzle, you figure out how to piece them together, and then you unlock a reward through solving that puzzle. But it's very linear. Something that I took away from our first game was that, it's once you know the solution, there's not multiple solutions to that problem. It's very linear in that approach. Although the game was not linear, there's no unexpected outcome. So designing system-driven gameplay was something that immediately interested me. And a whole host of other things, name it, like, and everyone would be the same. If you're a small team in this chat right now, or you're thinking about doing it, there's a number of risks that kind of get compounded on top of each other. And then you think, okay, what is it that we can, how can we approach the production of this game? So ultimately, we ended up shipping 7 months behind schedule. We weren't able to execute on some of the marketing opportunities provided to us. We shipped with bugs, and there were issues when shipping with bugs, and it would ship at a lower Metacritic than our previous game. And that was something that we really, really wanted to kind of reflect on and think, okay, what were the issues that caused this to happen? And so that's kind of what I want to describe in this talk and kind of provide some practical tools for. So although The Occupation is a game that we're all super proud of, there's definitely some learning moments from this, which we could take moving forward into more practical production steps. So these are the 5 things I wanted to outline this evening. And, I'll just provide an overview. It shouldn't be too heavy in terms of content, and they're by no means 5 the only 5 things. I just think these 5 things are very actionable points that, if you're a small team and you're not necessarily thinking about these right now, it's something that, I personally recommend putting a bit of time into, because they're not tools that we had at our disposal during that second project cycle. I think if we had had them, we would have had more of a foundation to kind of leap from our game, a game production point of view. So taking on projects first, you do see the kind of mission statement battered around with like larger companies. And initially, as a small indie, you're doing it for the art and you just want to create an awesome game. And definitely that should be the goal. That should be no doubt the goal, especially for your first title. You should be trying to put all of your creative self into that. But I think at the same time, when you kind of bootstrapping, you don't necessarily know the journey that you wanted to take, at least articulating it and writing it down. I think especially as you're collaborating with a group of people, maybe you're a solo developer and maybe it'll help to write them down moving forward. But especially as a team, you kind of want to articulate what these things are. So if anything, it provides alignment for the team. If there's nothing written down about the types of games that you want to create, or the direction that you want to take the studio, it's going to be very hard to allow people to see where the end goal is, or at least the journey that they're trying to take. So, and the second point is a handbook. Coming onto a team, joining a team, especially when you're 2 to 5 people, you've all started developing together. This is something that, especially when you're bringing new people onto the team, is something that you need in your studio as like a practical digital or physical thing to onboard new people. It's something that we never ended up starting until maybe the 7th year of being a studio. It's something that I wish we had had from the very start. And, you do think, if anyone's worked in, a larger company and there's like certain processes in place and, someone kind of dumps down a 50-page manual for you to look through it. I'm not trying to suggest that the handbook should be a super weighty thing. It should be as long as your studio needs to articulate what is going on and what the day-to-day operations of the studio are. So even if it's your founding story and the journey that it took to get there, it's worth writing that down so that when people join the team, they know the hard work that it took to get there. Something that I've seen happen in multiple cases on small teams is the original team kind of broke their back to ship this original thing. And then when new people join the team, the new people don't necessarily appreciate the hard work that it took there, and nor should they. They weren't there for the original days, and it doesn't, that can almost lead to resentment. But if you have something articulated and written down, digital or paper form. Just talk briefly, outline the story, what steps it took to get there, and even more practical day-to-day things like where is the coffee? You know, how do I order a new mouse if my mouse breaks, or anything like that? Anything that you think someone may just have a small question about, it's worth writing that down. And it can just start as a one-page thing, and as you go, it can get bigger. But if you've not currently got a handbook for your small team, maybe just join around the table and just start spitballing some ideas about what you might put into this. A key thing at our studio is that, you know, we have uncapped holiday days, which means we're not counting anyone's holiday. Now, that can go one of two ways. It can mean that everyone's on holiday all the time and no work gets done, and you might be worried about that. Or it can go the other way, where no one's taking any holidays because no one's sure how much is the right amount. Is 30 days the right amount, or is 60 days the right amount? And it's very hard when a new member of the team joins your team to know what the expectation is there. There's almost needs to be rules in place, although you don't want to have too many processes. You want to have a few just outlined bullet points in there. So for example, I was just reading a book recently called No Rules, Rules by the Netflix co-founder. And Netflix is another company that doesn't count holiday days. And one thing that they highlight there is that, you know, if you do have uncapped holiday allowance, you should be leading by example. So if you're the kind of studio that says, you know, we want people to take enough holidays so that they don't feel, you know, overworked or overstressed, you need to be the one leading by example. And that's historically something I've been bad at, because I would just be focused and head down and 14 hours a day, every day of the week. But even though in your mind you think you don't want other people to approach it that way, you're happy for them to take time off. If they see someone else on the team that's been there longer not doing that, then that causes an issue. So having something in a handbook, leading by example, that kind of thing is really, really important. What I would do as a practical step is just review it every 6 months in the calendar. So, you know, last time you reviewed it, just create a Google Calendar event or whatever calendar 6 months from then, and just drop it in the calendar and just know to review it, because micro changes happen on a daily basis. You may start seeing small shifts in production or process or anything like that, and you won't realize that something has changed so much in 6 months. And when you come to address it, you can just rewrite and keep it up to date. And then just make sure you explain it during onboarding. Again, I go back to the kind of larger studios where they may dump a massive handbook on you and you're not quite sure how to digest it all. Just, it shouldn't be so long that it's tedious to go through, but it should provide enough detail on the important aspects. And for new people joining the team, that's really going to be a lifeline. We made quite a few mistakes on, you know, hiring new people and not having these tools in place to kind of just explain to them about the process and how we approach production. And again, like I mentioned before, just you need to understand and realize that you are ultimately, even though no one's asking you to or telling you that that's going on, you need to be leading by example. So everyone on the team, especially when new people are joining, they're then looking to you to set that example. So that's a key takeaway for me. So the third step is OKRs, and people may be familiar with this, they may not have heard the term before, but this is a really cool practical tool that we use at the studio that I think really could benefit people's productions and keep these games on time, on budget, not shipping with delays. You know, it's not a magic bullet by any means, but I think it's a really practical production technique. So what is an OKR? So the O in OKR stands for objective, and the objective is ultimately what is it that you are trying to achieve. And I'll go into more context later when I talk about this, because it's a really important point. But what is it that you're trying to achieve? So maybe you have an important milestone for the end of October or something like that, and if you can succinctly write that down, ideally with a due date, and say, this is the objective, this is what I want to try and achieve, it's then articulated on digital paper. The KR of OKR stands for key result. So it's, how are you going to get to this objective? So it needs to be very defined. It needs to be thought out steps that can be measured from 0 to 1 or 0% to 100%. You know, if you can't measure it with a value, it needs to be refined. So, you know, if you need to produce 10 pieces of work, that's 0.1 for each piece of work, or 10%. And so if you're able to write this OKR in terms of a deliverable kind of practical production process, it really helps align the team. And I'm going to do more of a workflow on this. After this section of the talk, I'll answer some questions first, and then I'll go into the actual workflow that we use in the studio from a company level to show how we set company goals, and then team goals, and then individual goals. So I'll come back to this point, but the main thing here is that an OKR is a really useful tool to show first of all, communication across the team, but also know what you're working towards and how everyone else is achieving that goal. So the next concept that I wanted to bring to this talk is the concept of a 7-week cycle. And this is something we implemented about 18 months ago, and it's been working really, really well for the studio. And so if you think about, you know, a month, when you're trying to work towards like a month cycle, say you start a project at the start of the month and you want to deliver it to the end of the month. 4 weeks doesn't necessarily give you too much room to operate in. It's quite a short space of time, and you don't necessarily achieve what you want. And you're always, it feels like you're always just trying to deliver. And one thing I came across was a book called It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work by Jason Fried. And they're the developers of Basecamp, the software, production software. It's kind of like Slack, so check it out if you've not heard about it. But the way they operate is they work in 6-week cycles. 4 weeks seems a bit too short to really make any meaningful impact on a large project. 8 weeks is kind of a little bit too long. Like, you're not sure if you stay quiet for 8 weeks, and you may have gone over the amount of time you may have needed to like hit the brakes and redirect or provide a bit of adjustment. So 6 weeks is like a really nice sweet spot between just having the right amount of time and really digging into it. Now, you'll notice that I have 7 weeks written here. So I took this concept a little bit further, where we have these 6-week development cycles, and we break them down into three sprints ultimately. So you got sprint 1 for 2 weeks, sprint 2 for 2 weeks, sprint 3 for 2 weeks. And on a practical level, in terms of meetings at the studio, we just have one stand-up on a Monday morning for half an hour, and we go through what everyone's doing for the week. Every single person says individually what it is they need to do for the week, highlight any dependencies, and check what's in the calendar and notify people of anything on the calendar. And then at the end of the sprint, after one of these vertical lines, say Monday of week 3, we'll have a sprint review, which is 2 hours long, thereabouts. And we'll actually go over the current game project and the game build and just get more feedback from the entire team. And this is all to alleviate kind of meeting fatigue. If you've ever been on a development team where it feels like you're always having meetings, this is a really nice way to structure it, because you know any larger conversations are already just pre-scheduled. They're built into the production cycle and they're built into the flow. And then, so we've got those 6 weeks there. And what we then do is we have a 7th recap week. So after the milestone, say the milestone started in week 1, it went to week 6, we delivered the milestone in week 6. What we do then is spend 1 week just planning with meetings, design conversations, we review the build. And in the morning on the Monday of week 7, we actually start off with more of a personal reflection. So each individual will go around, and instead of it being production focused, it'll be more how they're feeling about the previous cycle. It'll be a reflection of the last cycle. There'll be prompts, but by no means we have to work off a script. But it'll be something like, last cycle, I feel like I achieved X, or I felt like I did really well in X, but I was a little bit disappointed in my progress over Y. Or I would have really have liked to learn this, or I feel like I messed up in this position. but this is how I'm going to address that. And rather than it being any kind of 360 peer feedback, just that self-identification of feedback really helps people align to this. So that week 7 isn't a work week. People might be finishing off small tasks, but we kind of schedule the week, first of it, to be a team reflection. So the team's fully together. We're discussing the project as a whole. We're kind of dissecting what went well, what didn't go well. We're then working a couple of days on our OKRs, which, the previous thing that I mentioned. And then we'll go into planning the next cycle and the next milestone. This kind of format here, if people feel like development is just going and going and going and getting a little bit off track, and it just feels like the wheels never stop. That was previously kind of my mentality, and it's something you can't get too comfortable with. When you're first starting out, it's kind of, every day counts, and even in a larger studio, every day counts. I'm not suggesting it doesn't, but you're just really focused on getting this game done. But if you go on like that for 2, 3, 4 years, you're at the risk of fatigue and burnout, and you want to plan breaks within this production to make sure everyone's aligned, make sure everyone knows where the project's at, and make sure we have time to discuss all the ideas. So you'll also see that seven weeks fits pretty nicely into a year. You have Q1 and Q2, you have Q2, 2 parts to Q1 and Q2, sorry. Then you have Q3, which is another 7. And then what we actually did this year was we trialed a 1-week summer break. Last year it didn't make so much sense because we had just shipped a game and everyone had already taken breaks and things like that. But just to try and keep on a more organized schedule, so we know that people are taking proper breaks, we took a summer break where no work's going on in the studio, nobody needs to think about anything that's going on, and we just shut the studio for 1 week. And even if you're not going anywhere, it's unlikely many people are going many places at the moment, but even if it's, you're doing some summer cleaning, or you want to binge watch The West Wing like I did, anything like that, you're just taking a week off and you're not missing anything production-wise at the studio. And then, you kind of roll into Q4-ish territory where, we normally set big goals for the end of the year. So it's kind of a nice refresher to just really hit the ground running. And then we take 2 weeks off at Christmas. Now, sometimes, which I can't quite figure out calendar-wise how this happens, but you have an extra week before Christmas. So our milestone this year is for December the 4th. We'll do a 1-week recap week. And then we still have this weird 1 week before a 2-week Christmas break. So we're going to use that as, an idea generation week. You can call that a game jam week. Whatever industry you're in, you can be using that week as like a team skill building development week, which we'll use to kind of springboard new ideas into the next game. And so onto the final thing. And Friday evening, nobody wants to be digging through cash flow forecast. All I would say is that if you don't have an up-to-date cash flow forecast, just using this as a tool as part of these 5 pillars, I would definitely recommend. Usually what happens in small teams, same for us, so definitely no blame being cast or anything, but you kind of look at your bank account. It's like we've either got money in the bank account or we've not got money in the bank account, and when are we going to run out of money? So there's no real forecasting or projection going on. And it is small. It's hard for small teams kind of bootstrapping, but just being aware of what is going on in the cash statement. Too many people kind of just think, like, if I don't look at it, it's not happening. But just understanding where you are with that is a really useful, practical thing to do. So, I love this quote in terms of profit is like oxygen, food, water, and blood for the body. They're not the point of life, but without them, there is no life. So, by no means are we saying, we're all in game development or whatever industry you're in for profit. It's likely you're in the wrong industry if you are. But at the same time, super important to have a healthy team, to know that you have these large goals in mind and how you're going to achieve these goals. And if you feel like you're not going to get there, it gives you time to kind of adjust and replan. So for me, again, if you're using this 6-week scheduling with the 7-week recap, it fits really nicely into this cyclical system. So I always set week 1 aside for finance. So it's always weird if you do finance, on the first of the month or the last of the month, because where does it land? What day does it land on? The dates are always different. Whereas if you're working off a cyclical structure, that Monday morning, week 1 is always going to be a Monday morning. So the types of tasks that you have planned there, and it really helps you stay focused and on kind of schedule with everything. Another thing that was recommended to me, which I definitely recommend people look into, is that you can have separate bank accounts. And this is especially important for, British developers, operating in the US, maybe on console, maybe on PC. But if you're getting paid in dollars, it's definitely advantageous to set up a dollar account so you can get paid in dollars. Our previous game, we had a US publisher, and we lost a lot of money on that transfer when the dollar would be fluctuating. And just knowing that it's stored in a US account, so say you're invoicing for $5,000, you get paid $5,000, rather than it being up to the market on that day what you should get in pounds sterling into your bank account. So having separate bank accounts, having a US dollar account, a British pound sterling, maybe even a euros account if you're getting paid in euros from anything. Having these different things set up is very useful to help control your cash in the studio. I'd personally go a step further, although it does create an extra layer, in that we actually have a separate account for expenses. So for example, we use Tide for our expense account, so everyone can have a little Tide card, and we know that everything expense-wise is running through Tide. And then we'll have a Monzo account set up for our VAT payments, and we'll have a separate account set up for our contingency costs. And that one is especially useful because, contingency costs is rainy day money. You don't want to think that it's there in your account. So I just put it away into an account that I can't access without just figuring out the login details and all this kind of stuff. It's not frequently accessible, and it's just rainy day money. So you're not tempted to use it. But having those little pockets in different places is really useful. And then always know your burn rate. At the very least, if you don't have an operating cash flow, know what it costs your studio to run for a month. So, what are the labor costs? What are the pension costs? What are the tax costs? What is the rent doing? The internet bill? Have that, even if it's just in a little spreadsheet. Knowing what your burn rate is, which is the monthly outgoings, allows you to project forward to know when it is you'll run out of money. And that can shift with different, energy bills, and as people join and leave the team, and just different things that might fluctuate like that. But knowing that and knowing where you're at, even if you just do that, that is super important to know. So I've covered the kind of high level stuff there. I'm going to dig into the mission and values, and also the OKR tool, because I think that OKR tool is really useful. I can give you a demonstration in Google Sheets. Matty, I don't know if there's any big questions coming through there yet. I'm happy to answer any initial questions. But if not, I can dive into kind of the more practical, kind of step-by-step stuff there.
Yeah, so we've got a few questions. We've got 4 sitting here at the minute, which might be kind of like general ones that you could maybe like quickly go through.
Go for it.
We've got 5 because Ross just heard me say this. So one of the ones that's come up is what kinds of financial support do you get as a studio, excluding your game sales?
So, we'll have VGTR, which is very useful in the UK, which gives you tax back on the expenditure. So that's where a cash flow forecast will come in super useful. So making sure you're tracking all those expenses so you can claim cash back on that. That's number 1. Publisher income. So, you signed a game and you're getting publisher milestones. That would be a way to get income as well.
Okay. The other one kind of like comes off the back of this. It's from Ross. It says, any idea how tax write-off of expenses works if you're working from home as a full-time solo developer?
Yeah, so you should be able to claim the tax back through that. The place that I always go to is Money Saving Expert, because they always have really useful tips on claiming cashback. So right now we're all working remote at the studio. I'm in my living room, but what we're doing is we're expensing our energy, for example. So, energy bills increase by having all our computers turned on at home, and we can actually pay the individual team members for that usage, and they can claim, we can claim the tax back on those expenditures. So I know there's a lot of useful tools. If I've got my email at the end of this slide presentation as well, like if anyone would like to kind of drop, like if you're struggling to find any financial information, I definitely reckon I'd be able to go into more detail and support there.
Cool. So the next one is a bit of a long one. And no, it's not actually that long. So it says, are there any modifications to the management advice you've given with the 7-week cycle that you tweak if you were applying it to a solo artist that's solely working to kind of increase their applications or their own personal show reel?
I personally wouldn't. And the reason why is it lets you plan ahead. First of all, it's great because when someone says, can you do the Animex conference on September the 25th or whatever, you can know what you're doing that week well in advance. Even though you don't necessarily know what's happening that day, does it land in a week 2, 3, or 4, which is mainly my deep development week. So does it land in a week 5 where I'm open to more meetings that week? And you can kind of schedule your way that way. The second thing I'd say there is if you're working from home, we've all felt it working remotely, some more than others, but having that kind of energy to still set your alarm in the morning, do a full work day, know that you're trying to be proactive because you don't have a studio to go to. Some people find that hard from working from home, but if you have a structure built in place and you know what you're supposed to be doing in what week, it allows you to stay more focused and kind of on point with the goals that you're trying to set yourself, whether it be 6 weeks from now, 14 weeks from now, that kind of thing.
Cool. So the next one that's just come in from Keza, because I know you'd mentioned to me when we did a test for this, that your next game is going to have a lot more animation. And the question is, in your experience, do many animators work freelance opposed to being employed by one company?
It does seem like there's a lot of contract animators out there. What we try to do is we try to have everyone in-house. It's a little bit more of an expense to the team, but just with everyone, again, with this structure that I'm talking about in the recap week, where technically you're not doing any work. So you're paying a contractor to not do work, but kind of sit in the meetings and all this kind of stuff, because you want them to feel part of the team, but there's also just a lot of just this is the brief, just go and do that. So contractors are generally, billed for their output per hour or day or whatever it is that they're doing. So currently I can tell you the situation on our team is that we have 2 animators in-house and 1 animator that just wanted to contract. So they're contracting and they're based in Madrid. So the downside to that contractor is they're not necessarily part of the stand-ups or the recap week. So our 2 animators are deep in there and they're just delegating tasks off to the contractor. So yeah, it's a weird thing in the industry because you do contract, animation, concept art, sometimes audio. We like to have a lot of that stuff just in-house as much as possible. And with a small team, hiring not just for that specific skill set, but for people that have a, more of a wide range of skill sets. They don't have to have a 360 skill set, but, if you can do animation plus, I don't know, maybe you can paint some concepts or do some storyboarding or something like that, or do some narrative writing. One of our animators is really interested in script writing. So, knowing that people's skills can be used not just for that discipline really helps have people on full time.
Cool. So we got 2 more and then we'll let you jump back in. So the next one was, do you feel that people in small studios need to be expert in their own field or grow fast for projects to succeed? I think you might have just answered that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I would add to that in that I think, when the student is transitioning, say you're at university, I know not everyone's going to university, but say you're going to university and say you're going from the 2nd year into the 3rd year, and there's that kind of question, like, I don't know what I want to do in the industry. What makes sense? I don't know where I want to go. My gut feeling there is to just say, what is it that you find interesting right now? And just hammer it, just head down and just go in that direction. If you find it interesting and you can wake up like inspired by the work, and you're wanting to put, 10 hours into just your study and just execute a really strong level, I'd do that. I wouldn't try and work in 17 directions. I'd just do that. But then when you graduate and you're thinking, okay, do I want to join a small team? Do I want to join a AAA team? Whatever that is, there'll be different skill sets that call out to you, and you'll be starting to product different things. For me, I think the first, 0 to 3 years, it's more about deep focus. And then you start finding these avenues that start like filtering off. Again, everyone's going to be different though. Like, I'd hate to say just, follow your passion or whatever, but truly in the first few years, it is just like following that thing that really motivates you and inspires you. And then you'll naturally start branching off, and you'll know the kind of path to take, as it were, when it appears, because you're like, that sounds really interesting to me. I'm just going to go for it.
Then the last one we have, and then we'll let you jump back in, is does the UK have any programs to bootstart small companies? And it's caveated with, or Europe, if UK companies are still eligible.
Yeah, so at the start you mentioned Creative England. Creative England have things like that, and as a larger sense, Creative Europe. In the UK, there's the UK Games Fund, which we got some booster money for the occupation from the initial prototyping. And then you've got the Transfuser program, which is more for graduates wanting to start these small teams. So if you're a graduate looking at small teams, that's Transfuser. But yeah, there's a number of different programs. For sure that the UK is pretty lucky for our creative sector. But across the world, there's people like Epic Games who are doing the Epic Dev Grant as well, and Epic Mega Grant. So, there are global opportunities there.
Cool. Awesome. So we'll let you jump back in. Cool. And if we have time at the end, we'll have a few more.
Cool. Awesome. So going on to the mission and values, I kind of wanted to dig into specifically what this means. So I wanted to give you an example of what our mission and values would be. So to give you an idea, a white paper game respects your time, values your input, questions your understanding to deliver compelling narratives that aim to leave you with continuing thoughts when leaving our worlds. Now, initially that can seem like a mouthful, but it hopefully succinctly communicates. If you just sit down with it and kind of focus on it, read it and think, yeah, I get that. I can see the games that they create, this is what they deliver. So, we want to respect your time in our game world. We don't just want to create, these levels that you need to hammer through something for 15 minutes just because we want you to spend a bit of extra time in a certain area or something like that. We try to deliberately design the world to respect your time, value your input. So, tactile interaction and very specific mechanic interaction. We want to make sure that, again, there's nothing, we do try to like trim the fat off that kind of stuff, as it were. Question your understanding. Maybe it's a theme that we're trying to communicate in our games. We try to start, we don't always start from a narrative perspective, but from a world and theme-based perspective, which moves into the compelling narratives, where you'll see that our games are very narrative driven in approach. And continuing thoughts, meaning, when you put the game down, we don't necessarily just want you to kind of switch off and say, right, that's that game done, what's next? Kind of, hopefully it triggers a few further thoughts. Once you put it down, you may want to go back to it and think about it some more. And a core value. So if you're trying to write these in your studio, again, these may change. Your values won't actually change, but how you communicate them and how you really refine that is important as a studio to do. So you want to, for us at least, we want to foster open discussion, provide candid feedback on ideas regardless of job role or seniority. So when we're in design discussions or we're having team discussions, although most studios want to kind of say that, yeah, we're super flat, everyone's, happy to do whatever it is that they want to be doing, you do need some structure in place, but at the same time, we don't want people to back away from their ideas because of someone being there 5 years longer than they have or something like that. So that's a super important core value to us. to be concise and articulate whilst also listening to each other's perspectives to seek understanding on a given topic. So, you know, when we're having these design discussions, you know, we want you to kind of get to the point, try and communicate it as best you can. You know, being articulate doesn't mean using every word in the English language, just means being specific about what you're trying to communicate, and then listen and base the ideas or the feedback upon, you know, group understanding rather than having your internal bias there. To never settle on an easier, cheaper, or quicker solution if an alternative approach provides a better experience to our audience. So, you know, we're very much audience first. And again, going back to that profit is life kind of quote, obviously you can't just shovel your money into a fire and watch it all burn. You do have to make, you know, strategic decisions, but we do try to focus on, you know, if this is a really cool, interesting solution that has payoff to the player, we try to take that approach. Respectful of the team's time through punctuality at all times. Again, we just like to be super organized, and if we say we're doing something at a certain time, we want to execute on that. And then being fair, own your mistakes, and operate with integrity. I'm sure people have unfortunately been at, you know, work environments where there's a bit of politics going on, or maybe, you know, there's something that someone would say, but they wouldn't say it to someone else's face or something like that. And we think that, you know, just getting everything out on the table, just communicating what it is we're thinking and feeling. Again, it's very easy just to focus on the day-to-day mechanical operations of the production. But when we're having these reflection periods and we're talking about, you know, the project and how we're feeling, you know, that helps kind of create this core value. So OKRs. So I've got my email at the end of this PowerPoint, like I said before. So if anyone wants to drop me an email, I can email you out this link. I'm going to click it now, and I'll go into what the OKRs, what I was referring to when I was talking about OKRs. So my first example is here, which is what you saw in the screenshot. And, you know, I've got to deliver this animation test tomorrow morning, but I've not even started it. So long night ahead of me. Right now I've got it set in percentages, and I've got this average here. So say I've got 10% of the way through. And that kind of, okay, I'm moving towards my goal. And maybe I got 50% of this done, and now I'm starting to move a little bit closer to my goal. So I got 30%, and I've got 12% here. And slowly I'm like, you know, filling this into 100, 100, 100. And all of a sudden I've completed my goal. And this is 100%. So this is essentially what an OKR does on a very, very basic level. You say, this is what I'm trying to achieve by this date. These are the things that I need to do to get to this. And it's very measurable. It really just helps you see how far am I along in this progress. And how we use this in the studio is that we'll have a company level goal of, you know, delivering this milestone by this certain time. And then we'll assign a different task to a different department. So, okay, design, you need to do this. Design needs to do that. Code may need to do this. Art may need to do this, and animation may need to do this. And so what does that look like from a practical level? So what we've got here is we've got our company page. So there's three to five OKRs on a company page, and each one would have been filled out, okay? And the committed goals are the things that have to be 100%ed. Again, this is very heavy, but I've got, you know, the email link, and there's also a book recommendation at the end. The committed goals need to be 100%. They're the blue goals. They need to be, we will fail this milestone if we do not hit this. And the aspirational goal is, you know, you may want to learn a piece of technology or improve a character pipeline or something along those lines that, you know, you really want to try and hit, but it's fine if you don't quite get the way there. So, you know, 50 to 70% on an aspirational goal is good. Now, the main reason why this system is so good is that, okay, this is one of design's objective. So what we do is we'd have a design department down here, a tab for design, and I'd just paste this in here. And so now design has an OKR that was based on this OKR. So I'll go back to the design tab, I'll right click, I'll get a link to this range, and I'll go back here and insert the link. So now I will paste that in there and I'll apply, and then go to design, get the D10 cell, which is the average from design, go back to company. I got equals design D10, which is essentially just how you reference a cell across here. Now, the cool thing here is as designer, I fill in their OKRs, so they've got a 1 there, a 1 there, a 1 there, a 1 there, and they've 100% of that. It's updating in this company page here. So as you can imagine, on a company page, you know, you start at the company level, you set the company objectives, then each of the departments, art, animation, code, design, they all take their objectives from the company, so we know the direction that we're working in, and then the individuals take their OKRs from the team, you know, art, animation, code, or design. And so as a practical example, maybe, you know, 30 to 50% of the OKRs are set on a company level, like these are things that we just have to do. And then the others are just things that people want to try and achieve, and then they feed back upwards. And the cool thing about this spreadsheet is that what we do is we average the progress of each of the OKRs per week just by this sum here. I basically just calculate all the averages, divide by 5, and then I can say, okay, we made 20% in week 1, 34, 56, we've got a good week there, we've got up to 80%, and maybe we're on 85 now. So it creates a little graph. And what you can do there is you can see on the dashboard that these are the company goals here. And then say design has got 30%, 35%, 50%, 60. We kind of flat out at 62 and then end at 70, for example. On the dashboard, you can see the lines coming into play. And so we're tracking the weeks here, making a graph from it. And the way I was talking about structuring our weeks before, we can see the progress that we're making. We can see how what we're doing as an individual is affecting this company's goals. And it really just helps create alignment. So if you've got this 6-week structure in place, everyone's set their goals at the start of it, and you're just working until the end of the sprint, the cycle, you can see what everyone has been working on. And so it's a really useful tool. I appreciate this is a little bit higher level right now, and I've covered a lot of stuff, but just the kind of introduction to that tool, hopefully it provides some interest to you there. So I will go back into my spreadsheet now. So I've got a link to the cash flow forecast as well. So if anyone wants a template download link to what a cash flow forecast would look like and what needs to be there, say you've tried Googling around, it's just like, I don't know what a cash flow forecast is, feel free to drop me an email. Happy to provide you a template there. And that's kind of the review of everything. So from projects, team, tools, finance, and time, hopefully, you know, although there's not only 5 different areas you can focus in, and you could even recategorize some of them, hopefully that provides, you know, some practical examples in each of the different areas that really helps provide alignment. I can cover another couple of questions in a minute or so, but the main thing being here is that when you're trying to create these games, and these games have big ambition, you know, it's not just the creative team that needs to be aligned. It's the studio as a whole. It's every milestone that's being planned in. It's the events that you're trying to schedule. It's the marketing opportunities. It's making sure that at the end of the cycle, you have a little process in place for reflecting and making sure you're doing all the little bits of cleanup. Because, you know, if you just heads down, making, it just creates unalignment, and there's not a chance for people to kind of express what they're thinking, really impact the goals, because currently you're just like working. So I just think that this structure is a nice, useful kind of framework to work from, because it does alleviate some of those issues. So just before we go into some questions, I love a good book. So if you're just starting out, the Measure What Matters on the left-hand side, that's the book about OKRs, which I'd highly recommend. Everyone should read Creativity Inc. anyway, because it's the founder of Pixar, and excellent book. Checklist Manifesto, No Rules. It doesn't have to be crazy at work. They're all really good books for like good practical tips for when you just start in a studio and you're trying to figure out what you're doing. And then for the people that have been developing a little bit while longer, To Pixar and Beyond is a really good kind of vision setting thing of how to really grow this studio into something similarly to Good to Great, a little bit more academic, but very useful resource. Radical Candor talks a little bit about, you know, the human side of providing feedback and how you're communicating with people and what it is that people are hearing when you're saying stuff. Small giants, again, you don't have to be a massive Pixar or a Disney. You can be this excellent company and stay small. And then the hard thing about hard things is for all the business mistakes you think you're making and the amount of screw ups you've had, you know, it's all kind of documented in there of people doing it on a much larger scale. And it just makes you kind of feel better about these mistakes that you're making. So that's everything. Nearly time for DreamWorks. 3 minutes. I think we can cover some questions.
Awesome. So the question we got is, kind of aimed at animation again. It says, what do you think above all else entry and junior level animators should be trying to do to break into the industry?
So we just hired a relatively junior animator and they emailed the studio. It was a personalized email. It was a couple of lines long. So it's not a copy and pasted email that we know that you sent to 17 other studios. It's just quick note about the work that we make and why they like the work, and here's the reel. Hope you have time to check it out, but no worries. Good to hear, chat to you. Quite short, personalized, not copy and pasted. And when we clicked the reel, I watched it. I had my headphones on. And I laughed out loud at one point of the animation. I was just like, this is cool. Forwarded it onto our animator. He watched it. I kind of watched across and he laughed out loud. We called him up and set up an interview, and it's like, it's as simple as that. Just don't, when you're trying to get a job, we know how hard it is to get a job, but at the same time, put the personalization into the application. And it doesn't need to be a massive, if you want to provide a cover letter in a more formal, like, here's my email to you. I've got a cover letter as well to go into a bit more detail about my background, but honestly, just a short personalized email with a solid reel, it'll win out every time, I think.
Cool. We've got another question, but I think it's probably solved by the email because it says, can someone see the book slide again?
I'll quickly go to that. So yeah, my email for people that were writing down my email, it's just pete.bottomley. So first name dot last name @whitepapergames.com.
Okay. Awesome.
So they're 4 to 7. So they're a bit of the deeper books, and then first 5 as well.
Cool.
I think we're in on time there. So
yeah, we're in on time. Tim, the big bad project manager, is lurking in the background. So yeah, I just want to say on behalf of Animex, Pete, thank you so much. I was getting messages on my phone from people in the industry going, "Oh my God, this looks amazing!" Because of the
nice.
As soon as you went into Excel, they were like, "What is this?" And they were like, "Oh my God!"
I mean, it might be like people are like, "Oh, it's Friday evening, and we're looking at Excel documents and what is going on." But it excites me. So if it's resonated with people, that's good.
So yeah, thank you so much, and congratulations on the success of White Paper Games. And obviously, we can't wait to see what you guys do next. And of course, we definitely want to have you up in sunny Middlesbrough for whenever Animex comes back on campus at Teesside University.
Cool. And I've nudged our animators today, so I'll make sure we drag them along.
Awesome. So the DreamWorks animation talk is just about to start. So we are going to finish this one, and then people can jump over to that one. But once again, thank you very much, Pete.
Cool. Thank you very much for having me.